Good morning, Top Fan Rivalry listeners. This is Jackson from Top Fan Rivalry. I'm here with my good friend Bill.
Hey,
It is the weekly review, one day later than normal.
yeah, one day later than normal, but that was, there's a lot of things that have happened. Jackson, come on, everybody, give us a break. Jackson and I are still really good looking. We have faces for radio. Leave us alone.
I was going to say it's raining in your neck of the woods. We'll just call it a rain delay, a postponement, if you will.
Rain delay. It's well, it was funny when we were at Ruby's. They had some technical difficulties, and Ned called it a rain delay. He said, we just had a rain delay." Uh, which reminds me, before we get started, we got to mention Ruby's, right? Over in Laguna Beach. Go and see Ned. Thank you for your corporate sponsorship. Josh over at Drunken Gentleman Clothing Apparel, amazing. And then Andrea, obviously, Jeff, Jordan, Josh, all the guys over at Duncan Inland Empire with locations, a second location in Colton coming, but with a location in Colton, Rancho Santa Margarita, Upland, Fontana, and of course, the Ontario Airport. So when you're in that neck of the woods is Run on Duncan. Jackson, let's get it started, my great and good friend. What is numero uno for you?
I think it's the big one that everyone's been talking about for the past week is the injury to Garrett Cole.
Mm.
He does need Tommy John surgery. It's always funny when these guys have these elbow injuries and it's like second opinion. When has the second opinion ever not said what the first doctor has recommended for anything? I want to know people who got a second opinion. They might give you another option, but they're going to go, hey, whatever the first doctor said, he's probably right.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, this is a really big blow for the Yankees, who are already down Luis Hill to start the season. So this is really kind of shaping up as a spring training disaster. They're down two of their best arms. Max Fried's probably going to have to shoulder the weight of being the ace of the Yankees rotation. And they're in a division where we've talked about it, Bill. They don't have a lot of margin for error with how good, Boston is, with how good, Tampa Bay tends to be sometimes. They're sneaky good. Toronto's trying to compete. Baltimore's a very good team. So I think this is probably the biggest injury so far this spring training because it really leaves the Yankees exposed because when you have a guy like Garrett Cole, he gives you a chance to win every time he pitches pretty much.
Yeah, listen, when this hit hard. That Max Fried signing became absolutely vital, 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 vital. Um, because again, like you said, Carlos Rendon and Max Fried are going to have to shoulder that rotation. Uh, Clark Schmidt obviously is good. Who knows where Marcus Stroman will be? Although now I think the Yankees are like trying to hug it out with him and give him a pat on the fanny and say good game and say please don't go anywhere. We're going to need you. As they say in the old '90s song, please don't go away from me. That type of a thing. And so you nailed it pretty good, Jackson. Scary for the Yankees, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, expectations are high. They're down Garrett Cole, they're down Stanton. One really wonders is this going to be a bad year for the Yankees? It might be. I don't know. But we got to
Yeah,
play the games. We haven't even got the opening day yet. So
yeah, yeah, 100%. And it makes it tough. The Yankees are going to see the hard part about the Yankees is the Yankees can score, but they need the pitching, and they're not in a position where some other teams are, where they're good enough on the bump that they can sacrifice a hitter or two. They took it hard with Giancarlo Stanton. They're taking it hard now with Garrett Cole. I mean, can please, right? Or as they would say in
yeah,
the hood, brother, please, right? Um, okay, Jackson, my number one is standings. You and I both know standings in spring training do not matter. Okay. You're not even really keeping a scorecard. Again, we've talked about this. For the guys that are going to break camp, it's working on their mechanics as a pitcher. They're working on their defense. They're working on their hitting. They're letting balls come deeper. All these different things. When you are trying to break camp, you're trying to do a lot better. I'm going to read to you a couple of teams that have had really good and or really bad spring trainings. Number one, Toronto is leading the Grapefruit League at 12-6, Boston 10-7, which I will be talking about Boston in a little bit. Uh, and then obviously Miami 6-9 in the Grapefruit League. San Francisco 13-4, Chicago 11-5, Colorado 12-8, San Diego 5-14, Washington. I'm sorry, not Washington. The White Sox 5-13. Jackson, do you read anything into these things? Do these is any of these teams kind of like that's a little bit of a sign to come, or is that just overinflated? Who cares? Blah blah blah.
It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter because you'll see teams right now still they're playing every other game is a B lineup.
Hmm.
Starting probably this next week on Monday, you'll probably see the regular lineup in there for 3 or 4 times a week. But it's all about just getting comfortable. You can't read it. You can't read into guys struggling or this or that. I'm a Braves fan. They gave up 16 runs to the Phillies the other day. It didn't bother me because it wasn't the guys you expect to see on the opening day roster. That's what spring training's for. It's really for just getting ready to go. Everything else is literally just a tryout. A lot of these teams are using guys that are fringe major league players. So all it takes is one bad inning to lose a baseball game. So I wouldn't read too much into it. Um, but if your team is playing well, that's good. That means there's a lot of competition on your roster.
Yeah, that's exactly the way that I look at it too. But I will tell you, Jackson, when you're seeing teams like the White Sox at 5-13, who lost 121 games last season, this might be a sign of what to expect. Now, do I think the Rockies are going to be 4 games over 500? Well, percentage wise, do I think the Rockies are going to win 90 games this season? Probably not. Do I think San Diego is going to be 9, 10, 12 games under 500? Probably not. But, some of it is telling. Miami, we know, is probably going to have another tough season. The White Sox are probably going to have another tough season. But like you said, it doesn't matter. But for some of the teams, it does matter. For some of the teams, it really does matter because, again, we're talking about some of this. Yeah. So, anyways, you get the point. You get the point, Jackson. So, no need to
Yeah.
relate this issue any further. Okay, my friend. What do you got for number two?
Number two, some news came out this week that really shocked me. We've already talked about the Toronto Blue Jays just a tad in passing. I want to talk about them now. They offered a $500 million contract extension to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which was rejected, and he made it sound like it wasn't enough. I'm going to come out and say it. 500 million is way too much for a first baseman. I think the Angels really found out how much you shouldn't pay a first baseman when they signed Albert Pujols. I know, I know Vladdy's 4 years younger than when Pujols signed. But to me, offering $500 million for a position that usually has zero positional flexibility, uh, for a guy who's had two really elite seasons and then a couple other kind of mess seasons, it's wild to me, Bill. And it's wild to me that he thinks it's more. I think we're going to see some changes. We talked about baseball possibly going on strike last week. Um, the new collective bargaining agreement is going to be big because it's going to probably try to rein in these contracts a little bit. The owners are going to want to try to rein in these contracts because you know I think guys are figuring Soto got this much money. I produce X amount of Soto, so I'm worth this much money, which is sound logic in theory, but it teams aren't going to be able to keep up with it because
Yeah.
after the 3 or 4 teams that can absorb those kind of contracts sign one guy, they're not going to sign a second guy to that much. You know?
No, 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 no. Exactly. And so what that also tells me, Jackson, is that I'm wondering if VG doesn't want to sign there. It makes me wonder if he really, really wants to sign with Toronto. Again, his daddy was Expo, and then he became an Angel. I'm wondering if that's the next move. I'm wondering if he's secretly wanting to go to Anaheim. Maybe Anaheim hasn't made all these moves because secretly they think they're going to get Vladdy either at the trade deadline and or in the offseason. I don't know, Jackson. I don't even play a beat writer on TV. So yeah,
Yeah,
know what I
it's
mean?
just it's baffling to me. His career OPS is 863. That doesn't
Mm,
scream anywhere near a $500 million contract. At his best, he certainly might be worth somewhere,
hmm.
you know, $300-400 million. But the problem is how streaky he has been.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, 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 yep. So, okay, gosh, that's a tough one to jump off from. Although I like where you're going with that because Toronto is going to be a sneakily better team than what people anticipate. And speaking of better teams than what people anticipate, can we please talk for a second about the Boston Red Stockings? With the injury to Garrett Cole, it would not surprise me if the Red Sox, that's right, the Red Sox, come up big and possibly sneak that division. Let me read to you some of their starting pitching. Okay, now this is just coming off MLB.com, Boston Red Sox, their depth chart. Garrett Crochet, Tanner Houck, Walker Buehler, Brandon Bello, Lucas Giolito, which we know he may or may not be prepared. You've got Cooper Crisell, and you've also got Cutter Crawford in there. Um, they have a rotate. They have a five-man rotation, and you and I have discussed this at length that a rotation needs to get you 60 plus wins to go deep in the playoffs. I think if you're talking Garrett Crochet, I think you're talking Walker Buehler, Tanner Houck, Bello. I think when you're talking Giolito, when you're talking all of these guys, I think there's 60 wins in the starting rotation there. Jackson, what do you think?
Uh, I think Boston has a good rotation. I think their lineup is what's going to propel their success.
Mm-hmm.
My big worries are Lucas Giolito and Walker
Mm-hmm.
Buehler, how they're going to be with their injury histories. Obviously, Walker Buehler was good in the playoffs last year, but it seems to have given people amnesia about his horrendous regular season in which he could not get a lot of batters out. A 5.5 ERA. He struggled to put away right-handed hitters, and I look at the division that he plays in, and there's some right-handed hitters with some pop. So uh,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully the Boston Red Sox pitching coaches could figure out a way for him to get those lefties out because if he leans on his cutter too much, as we see with a lot of pitchers in the MLB, you will get hit. It doesn't matter how good your
Mm-hmm.
pitch is unless your name is Mariano Rivera. If you throw the same pitch over and over and over again, guys are going to pick it up and they're going to put it
100%.
450 feet into the stands and they're going to bat flip and dance down the first base line.
That's
Oh,
so good. Well, again, you've got Connor Wong, you've got Blake Sable behind the bump or behind the dish. You got Casas, you've got Vaughn Grissom, you've got guys like Alex Bregman, Rafi Devers, Trevor Story when he comes back. They've got some pop in the lineup, and more importantly, they've got a lot of youth too that can move their feet. So it's not like they're trying to hit the 5 run home run. Without Shohei stealing 700 bases last season, the Dodgers, for the most part, it was either the 5 run home run or nothing. I mean, let's not forget for a second, the Dodgers almost lose game one of the World Series if it wasn't for a what?
a home run.
A grand slam, right?
Yes.
Right. It wasn't about getting them, they were only down a run. It wasn't about getting them on, getting them over, getting them in. It was about hitting the ball out of the yard. And so I think the Red Stockings have a great shot uh, to do some very, 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 very powerful things in the American League East this year, and also a few things going forward into possibly the playoffs. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think a guy you left off there, Jared Duran, who led the league in triples.
oh, my
He
bad.
led
Yes, Jared Duran.
All of MLB in extra base hits. Uh,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Guys like that are why the Red Sox are going to be good this year. Fenway Park has a massive outfield. Don't let the Green Monster fool you. Those alleys are huge. Dead center is huge with that wall that goes pretty much straight back,
Mm-hmm.
and you can play balls off the monster. So with that youth and that speed, the Red Sox are going to have a really, really good lineup. and they're gonna be moving. So I agree with you. I think the Red Sox are dangerous. I think the only worry is the back end of that rotation and maybe the bullpen, but the bullpen's been a Red Sox problem for half a decade now. If they haven't fixed it by now, bullpens are so volatile. Who knows? They could be the greatest bullpen of all time this year, or they're gonna be bad. It's the
Truth,
weirdest thing.
truth,
You know,
preach,
some of the
preach,
best
Jackson.
bullpens have guys you've never heard about on them. You're like, who is this guy? And it's 1 year he throws a 1.1 ERA and then vanishes from Major League Baseball.
That's Alex Vesia. When they brought Alex Vesia up for the Dodgers, this dude all of a sudden was throwing BBs and the attitude to come with it. And I'm like, who's this cat? And you fell in love with him, right? Now he had a sophomore slump, but that's a different story. So, okay, Jackson, talk to me. Number three.
I'm going to stay in the AL East. I got some controversial topics this week. I don't know if you've heard about this one. This is a new one. But the Rays have announced they won't move forward with a stadium deal in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Mhm.
Now, this has opened up some speculation. We don't speculate on here, but I will tell you the rumor is that the head of the movement to get a team in Nashville has released a logo and a hat already. And I can tell you Nashville is already courting Tampa Bay. They're playing this season at the Yankees not minor league, spring training stadium, excuse me.
Mhm.
And it's swirling rumors that the commissioner might force the owners to sell the team, Bill. And this is astonishing, to say the least, because they let the Oakland A's basically trash Oakland and leave
Mhm.
to Las Vegas, and it looks like the owners might make them stay in Tampa Bay. Um, the media market there's big. Obviously, Florida's a nice location. Seems like traveling to Florida. They'd probably rather travel to Florida than Tennessee. So it's really interesting. Look, I don't know what these guys do with nightlife, I guess. The nightclubs. Not a lot of nightclubs in Tennessee. I don't know. I've never been to Tennessee. So,
Tennessee, Tennessee.
okay, that's a lie. I've driven through Tennessee, never been like set foot in it. I've driven through it. But
Yeah.
yeah, so this is a lot of uncertainty there with how the Rays are going to play in a spring training ballpark, which is basically Yankee Stadium, has the same dimensions.
Yep.
How it's going to affect their team, and it's a really big year for the Rays because it kind of feels like a make or break moment to stay in St. Petersburg.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, how do I say this? Florida can grab good fans. They have a good fandom, very good fandom. But they're right now, Miami is so awful. And I mean, even Miami residents aren't excited going down to Miami, right? And so now, right? And so yeah, so I
Yeah,
my argument is that if you move him out of Florida, you got to put a second team there, and maybe you move it to Jacksonville. Maybe it's Jacksonville and Miami, different parts of the state instead of Tampa and Miami. Who knows?
the big rumor is Orlando. I have no idea whether they find land in Orlando cheap enough to build a baseball stadium, but it really does suck because there's all those people from the Caribbean that have moved to Florida, and they're big on baseball. They're big on
Yeah,
baseball, and they don't have a good team to root for. They end up rooting for the Red Sox or the Yankees or any other team on the East Coast, really, that's not the Marlins or the Rays because let's be real, it's kind of sad being a fan because you can't get attached to anybody.
hmm Um, yeah, I've been talking with somebody named Sandy quite a bit. She runs Trop in the Name of Love. She started a website. In fact, we got to get her on the show, Jackson, at some point, you and I. Um, lives in New York, but is a huge Rays fan. And so she started this cute little website where everybody goes and they tell stories about, and I've actually written an article. Um, and so yeah, she's a lot of fun. But she had mentioned that, hey, that it may not be happening, yada yada yada. It's sad. It's really, really sad. So okay, Jackson, my number three one is going to be a little different than what you anticipate me to say. But before we do that, let's talk about our sponsors again. Drunken Gentlemen Clothing Apparel. Guys and gals, take a look at him online. Josh runs the company. He's a great dude. They have little get-togethers, things like that. We're going to be doing a um, uh, cornhole tournament with him here shortly. Again, Josh is just a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic guy. We love Josh. We love everything he's doing. I can't speak enough about Ned and his group at Ruby's Diner in Laguna Beach. Listen, everybody, they treated us first class. They have a rooftop access. I was talking to Ned the other day on the phone. He's like, Bill, we have Top Fan Rivalry people there every weekend. We don't care. Every weekend you want to be there, let's do it. I said, even the summertime? And he says, even the summertime. I'll close it off for you. Ned's such a great guy over there. Rachel was over there. Lily was there. It was awesome. We ran into Henry there. I mean, all these people, Jaime, all these people are just fantastic, fantastic salt of the earth people. And finally, want to thank Andrea for getting us the sponsorship with the Inland Empire Group for the Dunkin' Donuts. So we appreciate the sponsors. We are a small business. We love it when other small businesses support what Top Fan Rivalry does and their love for us. So thank you so much. And we look forward to doing that. Jackson, my number three is going to surprise you. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
I think there is a tremendous crop of rookies coming in this year that are going to at least get a cup of coffee or a cup of Gatorade, right, in the majors. Some of them are going to make significant impacts. Washington has James Wood and Dylan Cruz over there. They're going to make some impacts this year. Hunter Fiducia is going to come up with the Dodgers at some point this year and make a little bit of an impact. Although if you're a catcher in the Dodgers system, Will Smith's the catcher for the next 5 or 6 years. So good luck. Wish you all the
Learn
best.
learn how to play outfield.
Yes, Mr. Santa Claus himself, Noel, is um, is going to do well over in Cleveland. There's a number of good rookie crops, but I'm curious to see how the sophomore seasons go for a lot of these guys, particularly Paul Skeens. Everybody wanted Paul Skeens' rookie card. Now with the top series one issued, everybody's looking for the Paul Skeens card, Paul Skeens card, Paul Skeens card. Okay, great, fine. We got the Paul Skeens card. Now let's talk a little bit about how well he's going to do. Jackson, what do you think of the rookie crop slash a potential sophomore slump? What are your thoughts?
I think the key to success for Paul Cruz is going to be consistency. Is staying
Paul
healthy.
Skeens,
No,
Dylan
that's Paul
Cruz,
Cruz.
Paul
Dylan
Skeens.
Cruz. Paul's Paul Skeens. Yeah. Oh boy. Woo!
We're
Woo!
just making up names of the. Hey, everybody on the weekly review, we just make up crap, right?
Yeah.
It was Bill Bush, President of the United States. It was George Gore. I mean, we just make up stuff, right? We just make it up here on the show. Go ahead.
Yes. Anyways, Paul Skeens. It's going to be his health. How is he going to reduce the stress on the elbow? Keeping having those stress-free outings.
Mhm.
I say that as in you can give up 4 runs, but don't allow 15 base runners.
Mhm.
That'll really reduce the strain on his elbow. Getting out there and pitching every day consistently is going to be his key to his success and the Pirate success this year. As far as the class goes, I think a lot of the guys on the top 100 list are major league ready, which makes it a unique season. Because you only have 26 spots on the roster. You know, not many teams carry guys that can be shuttled up and down, and teams seem to like to avoid, um, hoarding guys on the bench. Back in the day, 20, 25 years ago, guys would be on the major league bench and then get traded and turn into a star somewhere else. And you're like, this guy played for 4 years on the bench on another team. What's up with that? But nowadays, they sit in the minor leagues, they get that everyday playing time, to keep their trade value up or whatever. So it'll be really interesting to see how teams employ the top prospects this year. One player I'm really excited about is Dylan Cruz. I'm really interested to see how the Nationals play this year, having a dynamic duo of James Wood and Dylan Cruz. Their pitching is really intriguing as well. And I think it'll add a dynamic to the NL East that we haven't seen in a while, where there's another team, a fourth team, that's good.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I think it's a great rookie class, and I think we're going to see a lot of tough fights in the rookie of the year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a great rookie class. Um, when you said they come up and then they do well at another team, you just described the Dodgers from the 1990 series or season to about 2005. 2008 maybe. We named here, I mean, this is not fair, I think, but we named uh, Jason Worth in LA, Jason Worthless. And then he leaves LA and goes over to Philadelphia, and everybody in Philly loved him, and he was amazing in Philly. He was not amazing in LA. That much I can tell you. So yeah, yeah, but you know what? That Eastern Seaboard right there, predominantly around the nation's capital with the Nationals and the Orioles, they've got young talent. They've got rookies out there. The Orioles are still doing it with Gunnar and with Jackson Holiday and with Adley
Yeah,
Rutschman.
Jackson Hollay's another interesting one. He only had like what 60, 70 at bats last year.
Hmm.
He wasn't very good, but he was like 20 years old at the big leagues. That's normal. You know,
Yeah,
so you know,
1000%.
there's guys on every team to really kind of watch. If you gave me like 20 minutes to sit down and think about it, I could probably name one from every team. Uh, but yeah, I agree with you. I think the two teams, located there in Maryland area,
Yeah,
well, are exciting young teams. I think it's going to be good baseball to watch.
yeah,
At the end of the day, that's all we really want. If you're watching a game that's not your team's game, you want it to be an entertaining game.
200%. 200%. Okay, what do you have for number four? Take me into
Number
your number four, sir.
So you mentioned young players and how they're going to do. And I think an injury to a young player is really going to impact a playoff race. The Mets are down Francisco Alvarez
Hmm.
for an extended period of time, 6 to 8 weeks. He broke his hamate bone in his hand. This is the same injury Mike Trout had a couple of years ago that ended his season. And I think the big concern is it saps his power. Francisco Alvarez is, good with the pitching staff. Pitching staff likes him. I wouldn't call him an elite defensive catcher. He's pretty good, but most of his value lies with his bat. He does have some pop. I think this is a big blow for the Mets, who are a little thin at catching depth. And it's really hard for a guy to miss the start of the season and miss that chemistry with the pitchers, especially the Mets, who have a lot of guys they have on their projects. Things being a David Stearns run team, they'll run a million arms that were good 5 years ago out at you, and it works. So I think this is a big blow for the Mets, and their chances to win the division. We talked about it at length that the NL East is going to be a dogfight. Every divisional game is going to be one that matters. But I think Alvarez's injury has been the most impactful to any of the teams in the NL East thus far. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. In the NL East, yes. When he went down, I started laughing because, a couple of years ago, the Mets got rid of Travis d'Arnaud for basically fungal bats and batting practice balls, right? Frankie Alvarez was their new guy. Um, and now he's out 6, 8 weeks, which takes him into at earliest late April, but probably mid-May. So they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do up until that point. And they've got some pretty formidable opponents in the first month and a half in a division that's got Philly and in a division that's got Atlanta and a division that's got Washington, who might be sneaky good this year. That can hurt. No, I agree with you, Jackson.
Yeah, looking at their roster, their starting catcher right now is Luis Torrens. Doesn't really inspire confidence from a team with World Series aspirations.
Well, Jackson, I'm going to tell you something that you don't know. And I just need you to keep it between us, okay? Just between us, you and I. The Mets did call me and offer me the position. I sent them the voicemail. I then called them back. I let them know that I'm left-handed and that I'm closer to 50 than I am 40. They still offered me the position, and I said, I can't,
They
guys.
they, they
I'm
saw the
running
tape. They
Top
saw
Fan
the
Rivalry right now.
they saw the tape of you blocking the plate at softball. And they
You
said,
know,
"Hey,
I could do that. But they asked me if I could get you to run Top Fan Rivalry. And I said, you know what? Jackson's got a lot going on family wise right now. It might not be the best time for him to run Top Fan Rivalry. I said, you know what I said? I said, hey guys, check us next year. Maybe we'll be able to help you out a little bit. Maybe I'll be able to do it next season, but this season is just going to be too tough on Jackson and I. So just keep that between us guys, though. Please don't let everybody else know that. Anyways, no, good call on the Frankie Alvarez thing. And I did get a bunch. So I'm on a text message string with a diehard Yankee fan and a diehard Mets fan. And they're two really good friends and they work together with each other. And they both, believe they both live on Long Island and they both work in the city. And the messages that were going back and forth with the Mets guy, basically teasing the Mets guy. And then when Garrett Cole went down, turnabout was fair play. So it was it was amazing. It was good times. Turnabout is fair play, right?
yeah,
Turnabout is fair play. Okay, a good call on that one. My number four is I want to talk about the Washington Nationals for a second.
all
The
right,
Washington Nationals are going to be a sneaky good team this year. Nobody thinks that because of the division that they play in. And I'm going to make a very bold statement here and say that the National League East is probably the best division of baseball. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think the Padres did themselves any favor in this offseason. Not quite sure how the Giants are going to fare, right? And then in addition to that, not quite sure uh, how Arizona is going to look, and we already know how Colorado is going to look. So, arguably the best division of baseball. The Washington Nationals are young, they're scrappy, and they have zero expectations. So they could literally go into Atlanta, into Truist Field, and everybody's thinking, oh, this is the Nationals. They're young. They got a bunch of rookies. Right? And next thing you know, they take 2 out of 3 from you. Jackson, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong that these guys are going to be sneaky good.
I think they're going to be pretty good. Looking at even just their infield, it's Josh Bell. They got Luis Garcia, C.J. Abrams, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think Paul DeJong is probably the third baseman. That's probably the weakest spot in their lineup. They have a really good outfield. You got Dylan Cruz, you got James Wood, you got Alex Cullen, Jacob Young are very competent defensive outfielders. And then I kind of like their bullpen. Their bullpen's
Yeah.
looking good with they brought over Michael Soroka, who in case you guys I know not everyone's sick in the head like I am and reads a lot of stat pages and watches an obscene amount of baseball, but Michael Soroka was really good out of the bullpen for the White Sox last year down the stretch when nobody was watching. He struck out almost 30% of his batters. That's a really good pickup for the bullpen. They got guys like Lucas Sims. Their rotation's really solid. They got a lot of good young arms. Mackenzie
Mm-hmm.
Gore, leading that staff. Jake Irvin is a guy to watch for. I think you're absolutely right. I think the Nationals are a fringe playoff team. And if one team, slips up in this National League, it's really competitive. I think you'll see the Nationals slip in because, again, having no expectations allows them to play relaxed. And I think that's one of the most underrated things in baseball. Playing relaxed and loose wins teams so many ball games.
Well, oh gosh, you just nailed it, Jackson. Because one of the things I think you watch these guys in the playoffs and the teams that have been there before. So take for example Houston and Detroit, right? Detroit was just high-fiving each other, joking around, realizing that they were going into Houston and it was going to be a tough feat. But Houston played very stiff, very stiff. And what happens? Houston loses. Go back a year prior to that, and Toronto is playing Minnesota, and Minnesota is supposed to have the advantage, and Minnesota is playing very timid, very stiff. They don't look like they're having fun out there. And then that's when mistakes happen, right? That's when not only physical mistakes happen, but that's when mental mistakes and or mental breakdowns happen when you're playing stiff. And go to the World Series this year. this last year. Giancarlo Stanton rounds third, heads home. Teoscar Hernandez has the ball in his hand when Stanton is touching third base. And it wasn't a deep area. I mean, he was halfway to the infield. All Teoscar needed to do, and he caught Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, Will Smith caught that ball, made himself a sandwich down in the clubhouse, came back up out of the dugout and went to home and was still able to have enough time to tag out Stanton. So you're absolutely right. When these guys play loose and enjoy themselves, winner, winner, right?
Absolutely.
So Nationals are going to be good, Jackson. Nationals are going to be good.
I know. I hate it. As a Braves fan, I hate it. I wish they were worse.
Brother, please let these people be okay. I mean, they've had such the last time they've had anything happen was 6 years ago in 19 or in 2019 when they won the World Series.
I
Prior to
know.
that,
So I need another 20 years of futility. Like, come
oh,
on.
spoken like a true Braves fan. I mean, you guys win like 19 divisions in a row, and you're concerned about whether or not the Nationals might be good. Everybody on three, let's boo Jackson. One, two, three. Boo, boo.
They don't boo nobodies.
Oh, Jackson, what you got for number five?
Number five, one we talked about at the top before we started recording, the George Kirby injury in
Yeah.
Seattle. He's going to be out. He's shut down with shoulder inflammation. Who knows when he'll be back? Shoulder inflammation is possibly the second worst thing here as a fan behind forearm tightness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's probably going to miss at least a month of no throwing, which means he'll be back in 2 to 3 months. Best case scenario, that's if the pain doesn't linger. Uh, this is a disaster for the Mariners. They haven't really bolstered their lineup, and they're banking on their rotation carrying them. And George Kirby being replaced by any other arm definitely reduces the win total. I would say they lose 5 or 6 wins out of this. That's how good of a pitcher George Kirby is. And when you're a team that only won 83 games last year, it's kind of it becomes an uh-oh moment. The AL West is wide open. We've talked about it all spring, all winter, and I think this kind of opens the door, for maybe I'm going to say it now before we get to the predictions pod for maybe the Oakland A's. I'm sorry, the MLB wants me to call them just the A's, no Sacramento.
Sorry, MLB.
Yeah, the Athletics
The Athletics.
in parentheses Oakland/Sacramento.
Yeah.
Um, to maybe be a sneaky team to compete for this division because Seattle losing the best part of their strength and having offensive shortcomings. Texas is a question mark with health. The Astros kind of retooled. Who knows what they'll look like? The Angels are in a rebuild. This might be the Athletics' chance to really show off that young core. Their lineup looks really good on paper. I was taking a look at it. JJ Bleday had a really good season for them last year. Seth Brown's been a pretty consistent major league ball player. Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker. They got Zach Geloff, Shea Longlier's. The pitching's the big question mark there, but the A's can get any sort of pitching. I think this kind of opens the door. I'm going to put the A's as my favorite to win the American League West. A little sneak preview.
Bold. That's bold.
I like being bold.
Seattle, you're right. Seattle didn't do a ton in the offseason to make themselves better, which that is a concern for me, to be honest with you. If I'm a Seattle Mariners fan, your prediction about the A's is interesting. Do I think that the A's will be, well, I'm going to say that for our honorable mention. Okay, but I like the boldness of your statement here. I hmm, I just Seattle has such an opportunity, and it feels like every year it feels like every year they all they need to do is get to go and pass Boardwalk and Park Place with hotels on them. And it seems like at the wrong time in the game, they always land on Boardwalk or Park Place. And they can't get around it. It just happens.
Yeah,
And
it feels like that Seattle's always arm lengths away from success.
yeah, 1000%, 1000. Um, Jackson, I like that. I like that. That's a gosh, that's a good move right there. Okay, I'm going to for the very last time, I'm going to mention Ned over at Ruby's Diner. I'm going to mention Josh over at Drunken Gentleman, and I am going to mention our good friends over at Dunkin' Donuts at the Inland Empire. We appreciate them, and we appreciate their sponsorship. 40 minutes into the show, ladies and gentlemen, we've got about 15 minutes left with you, give or take. Want to make sure that we get my number 5 in, and then I've got some questions for Jackson that I'm going to ask him um, as far as some we did a little over unders before or overrated underrated, but we're gonna have some fun with this. So my number 5, obviously, I've talked about Boston, I've talked about the Nationals, talked about sophomore slumps and standings. My number 5 is for the players that are on the injured list that are coming back mid-season. Jackson, I'm going to mention two of them for you: Stash, Spencer Strider, and Ronald Acuna Jr.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, but Stash is now Beard.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beard Strider.
He's got a full beard now,
There
bearded
we go.
Strider.
Spencer Stash just ran off the tongue. Apparently now it's got to be Spencer Beard, which doesn't run off the
Sorry,
tongue. Spencer, find a pair of pants that fit you correctly, Strider. Whatever we need to do. That sounds a little
I
long,
don't
but
think there is. Have you seen his quads? I
yeah,
don't think there's a
yeah,
pair of pants
yeah.
that
That's the
fit him.
problem. Brother needs to stop getting down and doing the squats at the gym. I mean, stop it. Um, but do these players bounce back and make contributions? My thing that is always nerve-wracking, and I've had it for a number of years with Clayton Kershaw, is you see a guy be out and then he comes back and every pitch or every at bat, if they're a hitter, you're like, don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Like you're deathly afraid that something is going to happen. And there's a number of these guys. There's a number of these guys that are out. You mentioned Francisco Alvarez. We just mentioned two Braves. I just mentioned Clayton Kershaw. There's a number of guys that are out for a short period of time, but are huge contributors to their team. So, Jackson, what are your thoughts around this topic?
Uh, to quote the great Braves broadcaster Skip Caray,
Yep.
uh, yep, uh, getting a guy back from injury is just like making a trade. I'm sure if you watch the Braves broadcast the past 5 years, you know what I'm talking about. It's like trading for a new player. These are huge boosts, and the key is keeping the ship afloat.
Yeah.
We've seen it time and time again. Teams that weather injuries the best. All you got to do is keep the ship afloat. As long as you're not sinking, you're winning. Because as soon as
Yeah.
you get that guy back, if you have enough time to turn it around, you can turn it around. And I think, guys, I mean, there's not a ton of guys like that have an impact like Acuna, but injuries, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how he runs. He says he's only going to run in situational running, whatever that means.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on first base, in my opinion, it's always a good situation to run to second base because you're in scoring position. But
Define situational running.
yeah, like you're on first, you should be on second, right?
That's too funny. That's too funny.
But yeah, I think as a fan, you do have that worry that some guys are injury prone. You do have to worry about them getting back. But I think the big key is just enjoying them being back on the field. And if a guy comes back from injury and struggles, it's okay. We're human beings. If you've ever stubbed your toe, it's like you don't walk straight for a day.
Yeah.
Now imagine, doing that to your elbow. You're not going to be able to throw a baseball very well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Jackson, I'm just that guy that hates watching those guys come back. And I always get worried about whether or not they're going to get hurt again. Right. So,
I think it's valid, but I think you also got to trust the medical staff and the players.
hmm,
You could usually tell when guys are still hurt when they come back.
yeah. Now I've heard rumblings that while Garrett Cole was out with TJ, that he is expected to go to Yankee Stadium and work on covering first. I don't know how true that is, but that's the rumor is that he's going to wobble over with his arm in his sling and learn how to cover first.
I don't think you're cleared to run for a couple months after Tommy John because you pump your arm. So
Well, I just heard. I don't know. That was what was left of my voicemail. Who knows? Um, yeah, Jackson, I get nervous about these guys, and I've said this 100 times over, and you've heard me say it. I've said it on a podcast with your dad. I've said it with you before. I want to beat your best team. period, right? I want to beat your best team. I don't want the Atlanta Braves to come in and play the Dodgers without six or eight of their players, right? I want to beat
Oh,
your
so you mean
best team.
the 2024 Atlanta Braves?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, listen, your grass was even on the IL for a little while after a concert.
Yeah,
So
the whole thing. Don't even get me started on the spring training hit by pitches. Don't get me on that tangent today.
uh, this guy. But
Uh,
yeah, so that's my number five. Okay, Jackson, let's go back through this again. You had Cole, you had Vladimir Guerrero's $500 million. They're raising their stadium. Frankie Alvarez and Kirby, and a surprise pick of the Athletics. I'm sorry. I talked about the standings, the Boston Red Sox, the sophomore slump slash rookie seasons for these guys, the Nationals, and returning from injuries. Now, Jackson, I have a question for you in the last 7 or 8 minutes of the show. Are you ready for this?
yes.
I want you to give me two teams that you think are going to surprise people and be better than they were last season. I want you to give me, and I think you already named one, um, but I want you to give me two teams that are going to surprise people and be worse than they were last season.
All right. I think the Oakland A's, obviously. I think they have a sneaky young core, a competent bullpen. I think it comes down to the starting rotation, which I
Okay.
know I'm downplaying it. If your starting rotation's bad, your team's going to be bad. It's the most important pitching position in baseball. It's the reason why starters make so much money compared to other pitchers. But I think the Oakland A's are going to be the most improved team in the MLB this next upcoming year. I think they're going to win around 80 games. I think they
Okay.
have a ceiling of winning maybe 85. I think they have a lineup to certainly do it. I think being playing in a minor league ballpark unironically is going to help them. I think um, you know, using the heat up in Sacramento to their advantage is going to help them. And I think just being, counted out by everybody is going to help them. They're going to have nothing to play for but their next contract.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay. I,
that's a team I
that
really like.
that's that is a very, very, very good assessment there. Um,
Now comes the hard part. Teams I don't like, and I'm gonna say it. I've said it many times this winter. It's the Detroit Tigers. I do not like the Tigers. I think the Tigers are going to regress. I think they caught lightning in a bottle last year in the second half. I don't think their pitching rotation is good enough to sustain anything in the division. I think the Twins and the Guardians are better. I think the Royals are better. I think the Tigers are the fourth best team in that division. Um,
okay.
I think the lineup has some holes in it, and they didn't really get any big time free agents. It remains to be seen what they can develop and have a full season of Riley Green, maybe how that looks. But for right now, the Tigers are a team I don't like. I just think they didn't make enough moves to improve themselves from last year. I think it's going to be them trying to ride Tariq Skubal to the playoffs again. I don't think it's going to work twice.
Okay. Okay. You ready for this? Two teams that I think are going to be better than they were last year and going to actually surprise people. I'm not talking about just better. You could easily say the White Sox are going to be better, but they're not going to lose
Yeah.
121 games. No, no, no. That's not what I'm talking about. That are going to be sneakily better than they were last year. The Anaheim Angels are going to be better than they were last year. They've made some moves in the offseason. Like you have mentioned before, it could be labeled, well, we're not even going to say that, but American League West is not going to be the powerhouse in the American League. That much we can guarantee. I do not think the Angels are going to lose 99 games. I actually do think the Angels might pull out 15 to 25 more wins. And I actually think that they'll be very close, if not to 500. I do not think that they're going to win the division, but I definitely think that they've got some opportunity there. That being
Uh,
said,
I,
um,
I agree. I agree with that. I think the American League is far worse than the National League. So
yeah,
currently,
another team that I think is going to be better than what people have anticipated. I already mentioned it, the Washington Nationals. They are going to be a lot better than what people anticipate. Um, as far as worse than people anticipate, I'm going to I'm going to make this super simple and super easy, and I'm going to surprise you, Jackson. Now, it doesn't mean that these teams are going to miss the playoffs. I just think that they are going to be worse than they were last year, and it's going to surprise some people. Baltimore Orioles losing um, losing Corbin Burns and Anthony Santander. I think that's a big blow. Veteran leadership, both on the offensive and pitching side, defensive side. I think that's a huge thing. Um, you ready for the other one?
Yeah,
San Diego Padres. I don't
I
think they
agree.
did themselves any favors in the offseason. And the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks got better, as did the Giants, right? The Giants signed Mr. Kate Upton. Jackson, tell me
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I think it's going to be really, really hard for the Padres to, especially if they start slow, to fight off the rumors of blowing the team up. This whole since the death of Seidler, it's been kind of a to keep it PG, it's been kind of a mess.
Yeah, no,
uh,
it is.
it
Yeah,
from an ownership standpoint. So I would be surprised if the Padres aren't looking too hot at the trade deadline them selling. Uh, that being said, I still think the Padres have a lot of really good players on their roster. So I think they're definitely like this really weird team. Either they're going to be really good or really bad.
preach. They're going to be either really good or really bad. That's a great
I
way to
don't.
put it. I couldn't
I
think
don't
of the
think.
way to put it.
I don't think there's a mediocre for this team as constructed.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. All right, Jackson. Now, if you want to get into, as we wrap this thing up, if you want to get into the newly minted Box Break Club 27 ounce, here's what you get. It is $27, and you get your team guaranteed in two box breaks and two club breaks. Plus, you get a $5 off coupon. Plus, you go into the what we call the hold status, which means the cards will either be in a next purchased order or be sent out at the end of the month. Either way. So you're not getting charged shipping a second time. So if you are a Braves fan, for example, and you want the Braves in these box breaks, cost you 27 bucks and you get two of them guaranteed. Jackson, if people want to purchase merchandise and they go to the team store outside of the box break club, they got to use a discount code. So what's the discount code that they use?
Use code Jackson. Use it today. Use it tomorrow. Use it all season. You get 10% off all the merch you need all year. What wear some top fan stuff to go catch a ball game. Uh, Bill was talking about the Nationals. I highly recommend Nationals Park as a stadium I went to. I've been to a couple times now. Very nice place to catch a game, and they're going to have a good team there this year, I think.
Love it.
So
Love it. Everybody, we are so grateful, and we're grateful for AJ over at Bleacher Brothers Radio Network for putting us on. We're so grateful for everything that everybody does. Keep posted. We have a ton of announcements coming up. Jackson, should we do this again next week?
I think we should. I think we'll have some baseball to talk about next week.
Baseball to talk about next week. So there you go.
So some
Everybody,
regular
have a
season
great week.
baseball.
Enjoy your last week before baseball. Talk to you soon.